A wealthy man thought silence meant peace until he noticed a little girl trying too hard to be easy. When a woman quietly walked away, the child asked one question that shattered every adult in the room and forced them to finally listen. The black Rolls-Royce glided through the iron gates of the Vale estate like a shadow wrapped in chrome. Graham Vale checked his watch, platinum heavy precise. He wasn't supposed to be home until tomorrow, but deals ended, early meetings collapsed, and suddenly all he wanted was to hear one small voice say, "Daddy." He stepped out into the winter air. The mansion stood perfect, too perfect. Stone paths, trimmed hedges, golden windows glowing softly against the snow, and yet something felt wrong. The house was usually alive at this hour. Music in the kitchen, Marisol humming, Lila's laughter bouncing off the walls like sunlight trapped indoors. Tonight the estate was silent. The front door wasn't locked. That alone made Graham pause. Serena loved order, codes, schedules, control. An unlocked door didn't belong in her world. Graham pushed inside. Marble floors reflected the chandelier like frozen water. His footsteps echoed louder than they should have been. The air felt held, as if the house itself was waiting. Then he heard it. Not screaming, not panic. A soft sound, careful, almost apologetic. A child's quiet sniffle, Lila Graham called gently. The sound came from the living room. His heart tightened as he moved faster, briefcase forgotten. He reached the doorway and stopped. Lila, 6 years old, small for her age, was kneeling beside the coffee table, a folded cloth in her hands, a small mug tipped on its side, dried cocoa staining the marble. She was wiping slowly, carefully, as if the floor mattered more than she did. Tears slid down her cheeks, but she made no sound. She wasn't crying to be heard. She was crying so no one would hear. And in that moment, Graham understood something was terribly quietly broken in his perfect house. Lila looked up. Her eyes widened, not with joy but surprise, like she'd been caught doing something she wasn't supposed to do. "Dad," she whispered. She stood up too fast, wiping her hands on her sweater as if she needed to look presentable. The sleeves were damp. Cocoa stains darkened the cuff. Graham dropped his briefcase where it stood and crossed the room in 3 long steps. He knelt and opened his arms. Lila didn't run into them. She hesitated just a heartbeat. Then she stepped forward and hugged him gently, carefully, like she was afraid of wrinkling his coat. That broke something in him. Children don't hug carefully, unless they've learned they might be too much. Graham wrapped his arms around her anyway, strong and sure. "I'm here," he whispered into her hair. "I'm home." Lila nodded against his chest. Her fingers clutched the fabric of his coat. Graham pulled back just enough to look at her face. Her eyes were red, but her expression was calm too. Calm. "What happened, sweetheart?" he asked softly. Lila glanced toward the hallway, toward the master wing. "I spilled my cocoa," she said quickly. "It's okay. I'm fixing it." "You don't need to fix it," Graham replied, taking the cloth from her hands. Lila blinked. "I didn't want anyone to be upset." Upset. The word settled heavy in his chest. "Who would be upset?" he asked. Lila shrugged, small shoulders lifting. "I just wanted everything to be nice when you got home." Graham's throat tightened. He brushed a tear from her cheek. "Lila, listen to me. You are never responsible for grown-up feelings." She looked at him uncertain, like she wasn't sure she was allowed to believe that. Graham stood and held her hand. "Where's Serena?" he asked calmly. "In our room," Lila answered. Graham nodded once. "Okay," he said. Then, looking back down at his daughter, he added quietly, firmly, "Whatever happens next, you are safe. Always." Graham guided Lila to the couch and wrapped her in a soft blanket. It smelled faintly of lavender and clean linen, comfort designed by money, not love. He brought her a glass of water and crouched in front of her eye level. "Lila," he said gently. Did anyone tell you to clean the spill? Lila shook her head quickly. Too quickly. No, Serena didn't tell me. Graham waited. She just... Lila hesitated, choosing her words carefully. She likes it quiet. Quiet. Graham nodded slowly. And what happens if it's not quiet? Lila stared at her hands. She takes breaks upstairs? And you, Graham asked. Lila's voice dropped to a whisper. I try to help. Help. A 6-year-old shouldn't need that word. I try to be good, Lila added, so no one feels tired. Graham closed his eyes for a moment. This wasn't about rules written on walls. It was about rules written in silence. He took Lila's hands warm and small in his. Sweetheart, he said, steady and clear, being loved does not depend on being quiet or easy or perfect. Lila looked up. Really, really, Graham said. You're allowed to spill things. You're allowed to laugh loudly. You're allowed to take up space. She searched his face, checking for truth. Dad, she asked softly. Yes. Are you going away again? The question landed harder than any accusation. Graham didn't lie. He didn't overpromise. I'm going to change how I work, he said, and I'm going to be here more. I promise to tell you the truth. Lila nodded, leaning into his side. Graham kissed the top of her head and looked toward the hallway again. Whatever was happening between adults in this house, it would stop landing on a child. And he was about to make sure of it. The master hallway felt like a museum corridor, warm lighting, perfect art, and an air that said, don't touch anything. Graham walked it slowly, not because he was afraid, but because he was choosing control over chaos. Behind him, the living room stayed quiet. Lila was wrapped in a blanket, sipping water, watching cartoons that weren't really reaching her. Graham had asked Marisol, his steady, kind house manager, to sit nearby. Not to guard Lila like something fragile, but to keep her company like she deserved. Graham stopped at the bedroom door. Gold handle, soft carpet, a space that looked luxurious enough to hide anything, especially feelings. He knocked once. No answer. He opened the door. Serena sat at the edge of the bed, posture straight as if she'd been holding herself together by force. Her hair was perfect. Her face was calm. Her eyes were not. She looked up. Graham, you're home early? Yes, he said, voice low. I am. Serena's gaze flicked past him toward the hall. Where's Lila downstairs? Safe, Graham replied. Then carefully, Serena, I found her cleaning up a cocoa spill. She was crying. Serena's lips parted. A spill, Graham nodded. Not a big one, but she was acting like the world would end if it wasn't fixed before I walked in. Serena stood quickly. I didn't tell her to do that. Graham held up a hand, gentle, not silencing. I believe you. That surprised her. It softened her face for a second. Then the tension returned like armor snapping back into place. Then what is this? Serena asked, sharper now. Are you accusing me of something? Graham stepped into the room, keeping his voice calm, almost quiet. I'm accusing both of us of missing something. Serena blinked. Both of us. He nodded. Lila thinks peace is her responsibility. She thinks grown-ups will break if she makes noise. That doesn't come from one cocoa spill. That comes from a pattern. Serena's jaw tightened. She's sensitive. She's 6, Graham replied, not unkindly, and she hugged me like she was afraid to wrinkle my coat. Serena's eyes flashed with pain. Maybe she's afraid because you're never here. The words landed hard. Graham inhaled. He deserved some of that. He didn't deny it. I've been absent, he admitted. I thought providing was enough. I thought, if the house was beautiful, she'd feel safe. Serena looked away, fingers twisting together. It's not easy, Graham. She misses Evelyn. She looks at me like I'm a substitute. Graham's chest tightened at the name, but he kept his tone steady. Evelyn will always be part of Lila, he said. That doesn't make you less. But Serena, if Lila feels like she has to shrink to keep adults comfortable, we have to change the air in this house. Serena's voice cracked. I'm trying. Graham nodded. Then let's stop trying silently. Let's do it together. Serena paced once, then stopped near the window, staring at the snow like it might offer instructions. I didn't ask for this, she said, voice tight. I didn't ask to feel like a stranger in my own life. Graham didn't flinch. He didn't blame. He simply said, and Lila didn't ask to become the emotional thermostat of this household. Serena turned sharply. I never asked her to manage my emotions. No, Graham replied. But she's doing it anyway. That's what scares me. The room held a heavy silence, not violent, not cruel, just filled with everything they hadn't said in 2 years. Serena swallowed hard. She calls me Serena, not Mom. I know, Graham said softly. Serena's eyes glistened. I tell myself it shouldn't matter, but it does. It makes me feel temporary. Graham stepped closer, careful. You are not temporary. Serena let out a short laugh with no humor. Then why do I feel like I'm always auditioning? Like I have to be perfect, quiet, elegant, so you don't regret marrying me. Graham's throat tightened. Serena. She shook her head, tears gathering. And then she's loud or messy or emotional, which is normal. I know it is, but in my head, it sounds like failure. Like I'm failing at being what she needs. Graham listened fully. Then he said the truth he'd avoided. And I failed you both, by not being present enough to see the cracks. Serena stared at him. You admit that, yes, he said, because it's true. And if we're going to fix this, we don't fix it with pretending. Serena's shoulders sagged. I'm so tired. Graham nodded. Then we get help. Serena looked up, startled. Help therapy, Graham said, as if naming it could lift the shame. Support, tools, not secrets. Serena's eyes widened with panic. So you think I'm broken? No, Graham said firmly. I think you're human. And I think we've been trying to build a family with silence and schedules instead of real conversation. Serena's voice dropped. I don't know where I fit. Graham exhaled slowly, then made a choice, one designed to be safe, supervised, and healing. Tomorrow, he said, we're doing a reset. Serena frowned. What kind of reset? Graham's tone stayed gentle. A Lila day. She chooses activities. We follow her lead. We show her through attention, patience, and warmth that she's not a burden. Serena blinked. That sounds childish. Graham's mouth twitched into a tired smile. Good. Because she's a child. And lately, she hasn't been allowed to feel like one. That night, Graham didn't sleep in the master bed. Not to punish Serena. To create space, quiet, responsible space, so no tension would spill into Lila's world. So the house could rest. He moved to the guest room with nothing but his phone and the weight of what he'd ignored. The ceiling was high. The sheets were expensive. The room was perfect. And still, Graham felt like he was failing. He lay on his back, staring up, replaying the image over and over, Lila kneeling by that table, wiping cocoa like it was a moral test. Her quiet tears. The way she glanced toward the hallway before she spoke, like she was checking if her feelings were allowed. He remembered how she hugged him carefully. Like love had rules. Graham turned his head and looked at the city glow far beyond the trees. He'd built towers, closed deals, won rooms full of powerful men, and yet he had missed the one thing that mattered most, the emotional weather inside his own home. He texted Marisol. Graham, clear my schedule tomorrow. Family day. Stay close. A moment later, the reply came. Marisol already done. And Graham, thank you for seeing her. Graham swallowed hard. He opened his photo gallery and found an old picture, Evelyn holding newborn Lila, both of them wrapped in soft hospital blankets. Evelyn's smile looked like sunlight. Real. Undeniable. Graham's chest tightened. I promised you, he whispered into the quiet room, she would never feel alone. He had meant it, and he had still let loneliness creep in, not through cruelty, but through absence, through adults carrying pain in silence until a child started carrying it for them. Graham sat up, elbows on knees, hands clasped. Tomorrow couldn't be a performance. It had to be proof. Proof that a home isn't marble and chandeliers. A home is where a child can spill cocoa and still feel adored. He closed his eyes and made a vow, simple, steady, and real, no more letting Lila shrink. No more letting Serena drown in shame. Tomorrow he would show them both what safety looked like, without drama, without fear, just love with action. And for the first time in a long while, Graham didn't plan how to win. He planned how to stay. Morning light spilled gently through the tall kitchen windows. Lila sat at the breakfast table in star-patterned pajamas, feet dangling above the floor. She stirred her cereal slowly, as if she wasn't sure the day was really meant for her. Graham placed a glass of orange juice in front of her and crouched to her level. "Good morning, Princess," he said softly. Lila looked up, surprised by the nickname. "Morning, Dad." Serena stood near the counter, hands folded clearly, unsure of where she belonged in this moment. Graham cleared his throat, not formally, just enough to signal something different. "Lila," he said, smiling, "today is your day." Lila blinked. "My day, yes," Graham replied. "You get to choose what we do today, what we play, where we sit, we follow." Lila's spoon froze mid-air. Serena spoke gently, careful not to overwhelm. "I'll listen too, okay?" Lila looked between them, cautious. Children learn early when promises are fragile. "Anything?" Lila asked. "Anything safe," Graham answered with a wink. Lila thought hard, like choosing the wrong answer might break the rules again. Then she whispered, "Can we build something?" Graham smiled. "What kind of something?" Lila's eyes lit up just a little. A fort, not a toy, a shelter?" Serena hesitated, then nodded. "We can do that." Pillows came first, then blankets, chairs dragged carefully across the rug. Graham didn't rush, he didn't correct, he followed. Lila directed with soft authority. "That one goes there. No, turn it. It's the door." Serena crouched beside her, holding the blanket steady. "Like this?" "Yes," Lila said, smiling. "Perfect." Graham watched something subtle shift. Lila's shoulders relaxed. Her voice grew stronger. Not loud, just confident. When the fort was finished, Lila crawled inside and peeked out. "This is the quiet place," she announced. Graham tilted his head. "Quiet because it's peaceful, or because it has to be?" Lila paused. "Peaceful," she said after a moment. Serena exhaled, relieved. Inside the fort, sunlight filtered through fabric, turning everything soft and golden. For the first time in a long while, the house didn't feel silent. It felt safe. Inside the fort, Lila arranged pillows with serious concentration. "This one is the throne," she said, pointing. "And this is the castle wall." Serena smiled faintly. "Who's the queen?" Lila looked at her. "You are." Serena froze. Graham raised an eyebrow. "Looks official to me." Lila reached out and placed a paper crown made from folded construction paper on Serena's head. "You have to do the voice," Lila said firmly. Serena laughed nervously. "I'm not good at voices." "That's okay," Lila replied. "Queens don't have to be perfect." Something in Serena's expression cracked, just a hairline fracture. She tried. The voice came out awkward, then warmer. "Welcome to my castle." Lila giggled, a real giggle, bright and unguarded. Later, Lila sat cross-legged while Serena brushed her hair. Each stroke was slow, careful. "Does it hurt?" Serena asked. "No," Lila said. "Then quieter. I like when people take time." Serena's hand paused. "Serena," Lila asked softly. "Yes, sweetheart, do you get tired of me?" The question landed gently, but it shook the room. Serena swallowed. Graham stayed still, letting the moment breathe. "No," Serena said clearly. I don't get tired of you. I get tired sometimes. But that's not because of you. Lila nodded, processing. Sometimes I try to be easy. Serena leaned forward. You don't have to be easy. You get to be you. Lila considered that, then smiled a little. Okay. Later they played Pretend Cafe. Lila served invisible tea. Serena, she said politely. Do you want sugar? Serena smiled. Yes, please. 2 spoons, Lila decided. Because you look sad sometimes. Serena's eyes filled, but she smiled. Thank you, she said. That's very thoughtful. Graham watched quietly, chest tight. Leela wasn't demanding. She wasn't testing power. She was asking questions the only way she knew how. Will you stay? Am I too much? Am I allowed to take space? And today, finally, the answers were landing softly. Marisol appeared quietly in the doorway, carrying a tray of sliced fruit and warm cookies. Well, she said warmly, this looks important. Lila crawled out of the fort. Marisol. You can be the dragon, Marisol gasped. At my age, yes, Layla said seriously. A kind dragon. Marisol bowed. I accept. Laughter filled the room, light, unforced. Serena watched Lila laugh and felt something unfamiliar rise in her chest. Regret and hope. Later in the kitchen, Marisol poured tea while Graham leaned against the counter. She's been trying very hard lately, Marisol said gently. Graham nodded. I see it now. She watches moods, Marisol continued. Adjusts herself. That's not misbehavior. That's a child trying to stay safe. Graham's jaw tightened. That ends here. Marisol smiled. Good. In the afternoon, they spread a blanket in the garden. Winter sun warmed their faces. Lila picked a small flower near the greenhouse and handed it to Serena. For you, she said. So you don't forget today. Serena's voice trembled. I won't. Lila sat between Graham and Serena, leaning into Graham's side. Dad, she asked softly. Yes, princess. Are you leaving again soon? Graham took a breath, not rushing, not dodging. I will travel sometimes, he said honestly. But not like before. And I'll always tell you. Lila nodded, satisfied for now. As the sun dipped lower, Lila yawned and rested her head against Serena's arm. Serena didn't move. She stayed perfectly still, afraid the moment might break. Graham watched them both and felt something settle in his chest. This wasn't magic. It wasn't instant forgiveness. It was something better. A beginning. And as the light faded over the estate, Graham realized the real walls of this house weren't stone or glass. They were built from trust. And for the first time, those walls were finally starting to hold. Evening settled over the estate like a soft curtain. Lila was asleep upstairs, her stuffed bunny tucked under her chin, breath steady and calm. The fort still stood in the living room, pillows, leaning blankets draped evidence of a day that felt lighter than the ones before it. Graham and Serena sat across from each other on the couch, a respectful distance between them. She had a good day, Graham said quietly. Serena nodded. She did. There was relief in her voice, and fear because relief can feel fragile when you're afraid it won't last. Graham leaned back, rubbing his temples. I've been thinking. Serena tensed slightly. She noticed it and hated herself for that reflex. I don't want today to be a one-time thing, Graham continued. I want this to be how we live, open, honest, supported. Serena swallowed. So do I. Graham hesitated, then spoke with careful optimism. Maybe, in the future, we could think about expanding our family. The sentence landed wrong. Serena's face went still. Expanding, she repeated softly. Graham misunderstood the silence as uncertainty, not pain. Not now. Just someday, when things feel steadier. Serena stood abruptly, turning away. You think that fixes things? Graham frowned. That's not what I meant. It sounded like it, Serena said, voice trembling. Like what we have isn't enough. That's not, you don't understand, Serena interrupted, pacing now. You have Lila. You had a family already. I walked into it late. Graham rose slowly. Serena, this isn't about replacement. Then why does it feel like I'm always trying to prove I belong? She asked, eyes shining. Trying to be calm, perfect, useful. Graham opened his mouth to explain, but the words tangled. I just thought. That's the problem, Serena said quietly. You think. I feel. Silence pressed down. From upstairs, the faint sound of Lila turning in her sleep drifted through the house. Serena closed her eyes. I need air. Graham stepped closer. Let's talk tomorrow. Please. Serena shook her head. Not tonight. She walked past him up the stairs, leaving Graham alone with a sentence he never meant to hurt anyone but did. Morning came softly. Too softly. Graham woke in the guest room, disoriented by the unfamiliar ceiling. For a moment he thought the night before had been a dream. Then he noticed the silence. No footsteps, no music, no quiet hum of morning routines. He walked to the master bedroom. Empty, the bed untouched. On the nightstand lay a folded note. His chest tightened as he opened it. Graham, I need time to think. Please don't look for me right away. Take care of Lila. Serena. The words were calm. Too calm. Graham sat on the edge of the bed, steadying his breath. He didn't panic. He didn't shout. He thought of Lila. That came first. Downstairs, Lila padded into the kitchen in fuzzy socks, rubbing her eyes, as she asked, Is Serena making pancakes? Graham knelt to her level voice, warm and even. Not today, sweetheart. Serena had to take a short trip to sort out some feelings. Lila frowned. Did she say goodbye? Graham hesitated. Not in person. Lila's lower lip trembled, but she didn't cry. Is she mad at me? She asked quietly. No, Graham said firmly. Absolutely not. Lila studied his face, searching for truth. She'll come back, Lila asked. I hope so, Graham replied honestly. And while we wait, we're okay. We're safe. Lila nodded slowly. Then she surprised him. Can I draw her something? She asked. So she knows. We can try again. Graham swallowed hard. Yes, he said. That's a wonderful idea. They spent the morning drawing together. Lila worked carefully, choosing colors with intention. She drew the house. 3 figures. A heart above them. She wrote the words, slowly sounding them out, come home. Graham watched, heart heavy but steady. If Serena needed time, she would have it. But he would not let Lila fill the silence with blame. That night, Lila sat cross-legged on her bed, clutching her drawing. Graham tucked her in, gently smoothing her hair. Dad, she asked. Yes, Princess. Did Serena leave because she was tired of trying? Graham paused. He chose honesty without burden. She left because she's hurting, he said. Not because of you. Lila nodded, but her eyes stayed troubled. Sometimes she said softly, I try to be extra good, so people don't go. Graham's heart clenched. He sat beside her. Lila, listen to me. People don't stay because kids are quiet or perfect. They stay because they choose to love. Lila whispered, Can people come back after they leave? Yes, Graham said. Sometimes they do, especially when they're given kindness. Lila looked at the drawing in her hands. I think Serena is kind, she said. She just forgets sometimes. Graham smiled sadly. That might be true. Lila yawned and leaned into his side. Dad, yes, promise me something. Anything. If people are sad, Lila said, eyes closing, can we talk about it instead of being quiet? Graham's voice caught, but he kept it steady. I promise. After Lila fell asleep, Graham sat alone in the living room, the drawing resting on the table. The fort still stood, a reminder of safety built from ordinary things. Tomorrow he would wait, not passively, but patiently. Because healing didn't come from chasing. It came from leaving the door open and the light on. And somewhere out there, Graham hoped Serena would remember home was not a test she had to pass. It was a place she was already allowed to return to. The first day without Serena felt strange. Not dramatic, not chaotic, just oddly hollow, like a house that had forgotten the purpose of its own rooms. Graham kept the routines simple on purpose. Breakfast, warm socks, schoolwork at the kitchen table, a cartoon in the afternoon, a short walk near the greenhouse where the winter sun made the snow sparkle like scattered sugar. He did it all with a steady voice. He refused to let anxiety become the loudest thing in the home. But inside, behind his calm, Graham's mind ran the same loop over and over. Where is she? Is she safe? Did I push too hard? Did I say the wrong thing at the wrong time? He made responsible calls. Serena's parents first. They were worried but hadn't heard from her. Graham didn't accuse, didn't speculate. He simply asked them to contact him the moment they knew anything. Then her closest friend from the charity board. Then the yoga studio. Then the small bookstore Serena loved. Nothing. And every time the answer came back empty, Graham felt the silence deepen. He didn't tell Lila the details. He didn't let her sit in a cloud of adult uncertainty. But children are brilliant at reading the air. They can feel a missing person the way you feel a missing tooth without touching it. On the second night, Lila brought her drawing downstairs and placed it on the living room table very carefully, like it might serve as a lighthouse. Graham watched her do it. "Do you think she'll see it?" Lila asked. "I think she'll feel it," Graham replied softly. Lila nodded, then asked a question that sounded small, but wasn't, "Is it okay if I miss her?" Even if she left, Graham's chest tightened. "It's very okay," he said. "Missing someone means your heart is working." Lila accepted that with quiet seriousness, as if she was building her own rulebook for love. On day 3, Marisol arrived earlier than usual with grocery bags and her kind, steady energy. She didn't ask Graham a dozen questions. She didn't turn the situation into gossip. She simply said, "I'm here," and moved through the house like warmth with hands. While Lila colored at the table, Marisol leaned closer to Graham and spoke in a low voice. "She's taking this quietly," Marisol said. Graham nodded, too quietly. Marisol glanced at Lila. "That child doesn't want to add weight to your shoulders. She's trying to be easy again." Graham's jaw tightened. "Not this time." Marisol's eyes softened. "Good." That afternoon, Graham called the local cafe Serena used to visit on weekends just to check. The manager didn't recognize her. Then he called a coastal cafe an hour and a half away, one Serena had once mentioned after a long drive, saying the ocean made her thoughts quieter. He didn't expect anything. But the waitress who answered paused mid-sentence. "Sir," she said slowly, "can you describe her?" Graham's heartbeat shifted. He gave the details calmly. Dark hair, elegant posture, a woman who looked like she was holding herself together by sheer will. The waitress inhaled. "I think she was here yesterday, and today, she sits by the window. She doesn't talk much." Graham closed his eyes for half a second. "Thank you," he said, voice steady. "Can you ask her if she's okay?" "I can't intrude," the waitress replied gently. "But I can bring her a warm tea and tell her someone cares." Graham swallowed. "That's enough." He hung up and stared at the family photo on his desk, one from the first winter after their wedding. It looked perfect. It always had. Now he saw it differently. Serena's smile just slightly strained Graham's eyes on his phone. Lila standing like a polite little guest between them. Graham exhaled. He called Marisol into the office and spoke with quiet urgency. "Can you stay with Lila for a few hours tomorrow?" he asked. "Normal day. Snacks, homework, movie night. Keep it light." Marisol nodded without hesitation. Of course. That evening, Graham tucked Lila into bed and kissed her forehead. "Dad," she whispered, "if you find Serena, can you tell her she doesn't have to be perfect?" Graham's throat tightened. "I will," he promised. Exactly that. Lila nodded, satisfied, then drifted off. Graham left her room and stood in the hallway listening to the steady rhythm of her breathing. He wasn't chasing Serena like she was a problem to solve. He was going to her like she was a person to understand. And tomorrow, the ocean would hear truths this mansion had been too quiet to hold. The next morning, Graham drove alone. The highway cut through bare winter trees and small towns, still waking up coffee-steamed newspaper stacks, early sunlight reflecting off frozen puddles. He kept both hands on the wheel, not because the road was difficult, but because his mind was. He replayed the night he mentioned expanding the family, and the way Serena's face went pale, like she'd been struck by an invisible memory. He remembered her pacing, her voice trembling. "You think that fixes things?" Back then, he thought she was rejecting him. Now he suspected she was protecting a wound. The seaside cafe sat on a quiet street near the cliffs, modest and warm. Its windows were large enough to hold the ocean like a framed painting. A bell chimed when Graham entered, and he saw her immediately. Serena sat at a corner table, hands wrapped around a cup she hadn't touched in a while, staring out at the water, as if waves could carry away the weight of her own thoughts. She looked different, not messy, not dramatic, just tired in a way money couldn't polish. Her face was pale. Her eyes were puffy. The confident posture she wore like armor had softened into something raw and human. Graham approached slowly. "Serena," he said gently. She turned. For a moment they just looked at each other, two adults who had been speaking around the truth for years. "You found me," she whispered. "I wasn't trying to hunt you," Graham replied softly. "I was trying to understand where you went when you needed air." Serena's eyes filled instantly, like that simple sentence cracked the last of her defenses. "May I sit?" Graham asked. Serena nodded. He sat down, leaving space. Not too far, not too close. The distance of respect. Outside, waves crashed in rhythmic patience. Inside, the cafe smelled like cinnamon and warm bread comfort that didn't ask questions. Graham spoke first, voice steady. "Serena," he said, "why did you leave without telling us?" Serena looked down at her cup. "Because if I stayed, I would have kept pretending, and I can't do that anymore." Pretending what? Graham asked quietly. Serena's lips trembled. "That I'm fine." Graham's chest tightened. "You don't have to be fine. You have to be honest. With me." Serena let out a bitter little laugh. "Honest, Graham, you married a woman who looked put together. You wanted stability after Evelyn, after all that grief." Graham flinched at Evelyn's name, not in anger, just in pain. Serena continued, voice shaking. "I thought if I could be perfect, I could be worthy, like I could earn my place in your life." Graham leaned forward. "Serena, you don't earn a place in a family. You're invited into one." Serena blinked, tears spilling. "That's the problem. I never felt invited. I felt like a guest who overstayed." Graham shook his head. "Lila built you a crown yesterday." Serena's breath caught. "She did," Graham said softly. "She made you the queen of her fort." "Do you know what that means?" Serena stared, trembling. "It means she's kind. It means she wants you." Graham corrected gently. "And she doesn't want perfection. She wants presence." Serena covered her mouth, eyes closing. "I'm so ashamed," she whispered, "because sometimes I look at her and I feel love, and then I feel guilty for feeling love because it scares me." Graham's voice softened. "Love is not something to feel guilty about." Serena shook her head. "It's not that simple." Graham waited. Serena inhaled as if gathering courage from the ocean itself. Then she said, almost too quietly to hear, "When you talked about expanding the family, it didn't feel like hope. It felt like a spotlight." Graham's brow furrowed. A spotlight on what? Serena's eyes met his. And in those eyes, Graham finally saw it, the secret she'd been carrying like a stone. A secret heavy enough to crack a marriage built on silence. Serena's hands shook slightly around her cup. "I found out before our wedding," she said, voice barely above a whisper. Graham held still. He didn't interrupt. He didn't rush her. He let her speak at her pace like this truth deserved gentleness. "I went to the doctor," Serena continued. "I thought it was routine, just checking. And then they told me I probably can't have children." The words didn't explode. They landed softly like snow falling on something already fragile. Graham's breath caught not in anger but in understanding. Serena swallowed hard. "I didn't tell you. I should have, but I was terrified." Graham spoke carefully, terrified of what Serena laughed, once bitter and broken, of being unnecessary. Graham's eyes stung. Serena continued, tears sliding down her cheeks. "You already had a child. A beautiful child. You already had what people call a complete family. I thought if you knew I couldn't give you more, you would look at me and see a missing piece." Graham's throat tightened. "Serena." She shook her head, pleading. "Let me finish. Please." Graham nodded. Serena looked out at the ocean, then back to him. "Every day," she whispered, "I tried to compensate. I tried to be perfect, perfect wife, perfect stepmother, perfect hostess, because I thought love was something I had to earn with performance." Graham's hands clenched on the table. Not at her, at himself, because he had benefited from her silence. He had lived comfortably inside her perfect. And then Serena said, voice cracking, "Lila would laugh, or spill something, or ask for attention, and I would hear it like proof of what I wasn't." Graham spoke gently. "You heard her childhood like a judgment on you." Serena nodded, ashamed. "I hated myself for it," she whispered. "Because she's not doing anything wrong. She's a child. She's sweet. She's thoughtful." And that made me feel even worse. Because the problem was never her. It was the ache inside me. Graham exhaled, slow and steady. "Why didn't you tell me?" Serena's eyes flashed with old fear. "Because I didn't want to lose you." Graham reached across the table and took her hand, warm, firm, real. "You didn't lose me," he said. Serena's shoulders shook. "I almost did. I almost walked away completely, because I couldn't stand feeling like an outsider in my own marriage." Graham squeezed her hand. "Serena," he said softly, "listen to me. I married you because of you, not because of what your body can do." Serena stared, tears trembling on her lashes. "But you said you wanted to expand our family." Graham nodded. "I did, but I meant it as love growing, not you proving something." Serena let out a shaky breath. "And if the idea of another child hurts you," Graham continued, "we don't use it as a bandage. We don't use it as a test. We build the family we already have safely, honestly," Serena whispered. "What if I never feel like a real mother?" Graham's voice was steady, certain. "Then we redefine what real means." Serena blinked. Graham continued. "Lila asked me last night to tell you something." Serena's breath caught. What Graham's eyes softened. She said, "Tell Serena she doesn't have to be perfect." Serena covered her mouth again. A sob escaped. Not loud, not messy, just the sound of a woman finally letting the truth touch daylight. Graham stood and moved to her side of the booth, kneeling slightly so he could be closer without towering over her. "Renana," he said quietly, "you are not a guest in our family. You are part of it. And if you're struggling, if you're carrying depression, shame, grief, we don't treat it like a secret. We treat it like something we face together with help." Serena nodded, trembling. "Help? Like therapy?" "Yes," Graham replied. "And support, and honesty, and boundaries, and time. Serena looked down, then whispered the words that finally sounded like hope instead of fear. I want to come home. Graham smiled, tears in his eyes. Then come home. Serena squeezed his hand like she was gripping a lifeline. And Graham, she asked softly. Yes, thank you for finding me like this, she whispered. Not as a failure, not as a problem, but as me. Graham kissed her knuckles gently. Always, he said. We try again. Together. Outside, the ocean kept moving, steady, patient, endless. And for the first time in years, Serena's heart believed she could be too. The drive back from the coast was quiet. Not tense. Not heavy. Just thoughtful. Graham kept his eyes on the road, while Serena stared out the window, the ocean fading behind them. Her hands rested in her lap, no longer clenched. The truth once spoken hadn't destroyed anything. It had loosened the knot. When the gates of the estate opened, Serena exhaled. I'm scared, she admitted softly. Graham nodded. That's okay. We'll go slowly. Marisol was waiting inside, calm and welcoming like she always was. She's upstairs drawing, Marisol said gently. She asked if it was okay to wait. Serena's chest tightened. She shouldn't have to wait. Graham squeezed her hand. She won't. They walked upstairs together. Leela sat cross-legged on the rug, crayons scattered around her. She looked up and froze. Serena, she asked, uncertain but hopeful. Serena didn't rush forward. She didn't overwhelm. She knelt at Lila's level, keeping her voice steady. Hi, Lila, she said softly. I'm home. Lila blinked. Did you finish your trip? Serena nodded. I did, and I learned something important. Lila tilted her head. Serena continued carefully. I left because I was sad and didn't know how to talk about it. That was my mistake, not yours. Lila's brow furrowed. I wasn't bad, no, Serena said clearly. You were wonderful. You always are. Layla studied her face, searching for certainty. Then she held up her drawing. I made this so you'd know we can try again. Serena's eyes filled, but she stayed composed. Thank you, she said. And I want you to know something too. She placed a hand over her heart. When I feel sad or tired, I will talk about it. I won't disappear. That's my job as a grown-up. Lila nodded slowly, absorbing the promise. Graham watched the exchange and felt something settle. This wasn't forgiveness demanded. This was trust being rebuilt, brick by brick. Serena stood and looked at Graham. May I hug her? Graham nodded. Serena opened her arms, not fast, not tight. Lila stepped in, and this time she didn't hug carefully. She hugged fully. That evening, the three of them sat together on the living room rug. No couch, no hierarchy, just equal height and honest space. Graham spoke first. We're going to make some new rules for this house, he said gently. Rules that keep everyone safe. Lila's eyes widened. Even grown-ups, especially grown-ups, Serena replied with a small smile. Graham continued. Rule 1, feelings get words, not silence. Serena nodded. If I feel overwhelmed, I will say it. I won't expect you to notice or fix it. Lila raised her hand like she was in school. If I feel sad, can I say it too? Yes, Graham said immediately. Always. Even if it's loud, Lila asked. Even if it's loud, Serena agreed. Graham added, Rule 2. No one earns love by being quiet or perfect. Lila looked thoughtful. So, I don't have to be easy. No, Serena said. You get to be you. Lila smiled. Graham took a breath. Rule 3, we ask for help. Serena nodded. We're going to talk to a therapist. That's like a helper for feelings. Lila considered this. Can Bunny come? Serena laughed softly. Absolutely. They all relaxed a little. Then Serena spoke, voice careful but sincere. Lila, I want to apologize for something. Lila stiffened just slightly. Serena kept her tone steady. There were times I acted distant because I was hurting. I'm sorry if that made you feel small. Lila thought for a moment. Then she said something simple and devastating in its honesty. I didn't know if I was allowed to bother you. Serena's breath caught. She nodded, accepting it without defense. I'm so sorry. You're always allowed. Lila watched her closely, then nodded once. Okay, she said. Not dramatic, not final, just hopeful. That night, Graham tucked Lila in while Serena stood nearby. Dad, Lila whispered. Yes, are we a real family? Graham smiled. Yes, Serena added softly. Not because we're perfect, because we try again. Lila yawned. That's my favorite kind. The weeks that followed didn't turn perfect. They turned honest. Serena began therapy twice a week. She came home tired sometimes, but she talked. She named feelings instead of hiding them. Graham changed his work schedule. Fewer flights, more dinners, more presents, and Lila slowly stopped watching the hallway before she spoke. One afternoon, she spilled juice at the table. She froze, then looked up. Graham smiled. No problem. Grab a towel. Lila blinked. That's it, Serena said warmly. Lila laughed a surprised, bright sound and wiped the table without tears. Later that night, Serena found Lila in the fort they'd rebuilt together. Can I come in? Serena asked. Lila nodded. It's the calm place. Serena sat beside her. I want you to know something, Serena said. Even when I feel sad, I don't want to leave. And if I ever feel like I might, I'll tell you and Dad first. Lila leaned into her side. Okay, she said. We can sit quietly then. Serena smiled. Yes, together. Graham watched from the doorway, heart full. This house hadn't been saved by money. It had been saved by listening, by adults taking responsibility for their feelings, by a child no longer carrying what wasn't hers. As night settled over the estate, the lights stayed warm. Not to keep darkness out, but to remind everyone inside. This is a place where people stay. The therapy office didn't look like a place for problems. It looked like a living room that had learned how to listen. Soft chairs, warm colors, a low table filled with crayons and paper, a shelf of toys that didn't ask questions. Lila sat between Graham and Serena Bunny tucked under her arm. Dr. Elaine Harper smiled kindly. You can talk draw or just sit, there's no right way to be here. Lila relaxed immediately. Can Bunny talk too? Of course, Dr. Harper replied. Sometimes stuffed animals are very brave. That made Lila grin. The session moved gently, no pressure, no digging. Dr. Harper asked Graham how he felt when Serena left. Graham answered honestly. Scared, but more than that. Responsible. I realized how often I solved things with money instead of time. Serena nodded. I hid behind being fine. I thought if I needed help, I would be a burden. Dr. Harper turned to Lila. What about you? Lila thought for a moment. Sometimes, she said softly, I didn't know if my feelings were allowed. Serena's breath caught. Dr. Harper nodded. And now Lila looked at Graham, then Serena. Now she said we talk. That was it. No big speech. No tears. Just a child stating a truth that had taken 3 adults a lifetime to learn. Weeks passed. Sessions continued. Sometimes Lila drew pictures instead of speaking. Sometimes Serena cried. Sometimes Graham sat very still, learning to listen without fixing. Slowly the house changed. Not louder. Warmer. One night as Serena tucked Lila in, Lila whispered, Can I call you? Mom, sometimes Serena didn't rush. She knelt eye level. Only if it feels right to you. Lila smiled. It does. Serena's eyes filled, but she kept her voice steady. I'd love that. And for the first time, the word didn't feel heavy. It felt earned. Spring arrived quietly. The snow melted. The garden woke up. The fort stayed rebuilt, improved, permanent. One evening after Lila was asleep, Graham and Serena sat on the porch wrapped in blankets, tea steaming between them. I've been thinking, Serena said carefully, about what family really means. Graham turned to her. Me too. Serena hesitated. I used to think family was something you complete, something you prove. Graham nodded. I used to think it was something you provide. Serena smiled sadly. Turns out, it's something you choose. Every day. She took a breath. I've been reading about adoption. Graham didn't speak immediately. He let the words settle. Not to fix anything, Serena added quickly. Not because we're missing something, but because we have room. Graham smiled slow and real. I like how that sounds. They talked about it carefully, slowly, responsibly. They talked to Lila not with promises, not with pressure, just information. Some kids, Graham explained, need families to choose them. Lila thought hard. So, like how Serena chose me. Serena's throat tightened. Yes, exactly like that. Lila nodded. I think that's nice. Nothing was decided that night. And that was the point. This family no longer rushed healing. They respected it. Leela's 7th birthday arrived on a soft spring afternoon. No grand spectacle, no overwhelming crowd. Just balloons, a homemade cake, and laughter that sounded easy now. Serena placed the candles carefully, 7 small flames, steady and bright. Make a wish, Graham said. Lila closed her eyes. She didn't wish for things. She wished for moments. After the cake, Lila disappeared briefly and returned holding an envelope. She walked up to Serena, heart pounding. This is for you, she said. Serena opened it. Inside was a drawing, a house, 3 figures holding hands. Above them written carefully, Our Family. Serena knelt and hugged Lila, not tightly, not desperately. Just right. Thank you, she whispered, for letting me be here. Lila smiled. You didn't have to earn it. Graham joined them, wrapping both in his arms. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low, they sat together in the garden. Lila leaned against Serena and said casually, like it was the most natural thing in the world, Mom, can you read tonight? Serena smiled, tears shining. Of course. Graham watched them and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. Not because everything was perfect, but because nothing was hidden. As the lights inside the house turned on warm and steady, Graham realized something. This story wasn't about a billionaire. It wasn't about loss or mistakes. It was about a child who taught 2 adults how to stay, and a family that learned home isn't where people never leave. Home is where people come back, tell the truth, and try again. Together. Did this story move your soul? Share your feelings in the comments and rate it from 1 to 10. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, then tap the bell icon so you never miss a new story. Click the end screen to watch another heartfelt video. See you in the next story.